I mean, when you're 20 and 30, it's great fun.
I'm not into stand-up all night.
I used to be coming from New York. Used to
Yeah.
be an annual 20.
But most of it's gone away.
The Planning and Zoning meeting for January 3rd, 2018 will now come to order. Please stand with us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we have roll call, please?
Chairman Williams,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Shavir,
Yes.
Secretary Chambers, Dr. Faison, Member Baker, Member Ritchie, Member Noel Copeland, School Board Member Hare.
And we have quorum. Next is approval of minutes for December 6, 2017.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the minutes for December 6, 2017.
Is there a second?
I second it.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All persons who anticipate speaking on any public hearing item must first fill out the oath card to be heard on the agenda item and sign the oath card contained thereon. These cards are located on the table near the entrance to the council chamber or may be obtained from the recording secretary. This meeting will be conducted in accordance to procedures adopted in Resolution 24-1997. Those speaking in favor of a request will be heard first. Those opposed will be heard second, and those who wish to make a public comment on an item will speak third. The applicant may make a brief rebuttal if necessary. A representative from either side, for or against, may cross-examine a witness. Anyone who speaks is considered a witness. If you have photographs, sketches, or documents you desire the commission to consider, they must be submitted in evidence and will be retained by the city. Please submit such exhibits to the recording secretary. Staff, has all items been properly advertised?
Yes, they have.
And has anybody on the commission had the opportunity to speak to anybody in the public about the items coming before us?
I spoke to the lady.
Okay, and if you would, okay.
I did speak with a lady who is not present. About what? About one of the items coming before us, about the Brookwood, is that what it's called? Brookshire subdivision.
Okay. Okay. So with that, if we want to go to the first item.
Yes, item 9A starts on the agenda item starts on page 10 of your packet. I'm going to be reading from the staff report on page 12, the background information section on page 12. This is a small-scale amendment request to amend the future land use map from residential 2 to industrial and rezone the property from rural residential to light industrial services and warehousing, the M1 zoning district. The applicant, Francis Pierce, is requesting to amend the land use on property approximately 1.61 acres in size located at 2550 Flake Road. The request is to amend the land use map from the residential 2 land use designation to the industrial land use designation. The request also proposes to rezone the property from the current rural residential RR zoning district to the light industrial services and warehousing M1 zoning district. The applicant intends to develop the property with warehouse and office space with a building footprint of approximately 6,000 square feet in size. This property is within the area of critical concern. Specifically, it is within 750 feet of a municipal well, which limits the amount of impervious surface on the property to a maximum of 25%. If this request for a small-scale amendment is approved, the property will be required to connect to the sanitary sewer system per section 30-266B of the Land Development Regulations. The Land Development Regulations require any property zoned or used for industrial or manufacturing purposes that are within 1/4 of a mile or 1,320 feet, of an available sewer main to connect to the sanitary sewer system. The staff report's rather lengthy, so I'm not going to go through all of it. However, I did want to go over some of the inconsistencies that staff identified through our review. This is on page 14 of the staff report under the Comprehensive Plan and Land Development Regulations Review. This request is to amend the future land use map, and the analysis that I'll read off is related to the consistency between the comprehensive plan and the land development regulations as they relate to this request. Based on staff's findings, we identified 3 policies of the comprehensive plan that this request is inconsistent with. The first being policy 1.8.1. The property subject to this request does not meet the criteria for access to roadways, including convenient access to I-95, U.S. Highway 1, State Road 405, or State Road 407. Although this property is adjacent or near the Arthur Dunn Air Park, the comprehensive plan only identifies the Space Coast Regional Airport as an air-related facility, so that does not qualify in this case. The next policy is policy 1.8.2. This is dealing with level of service standards. This property is not adjacent to what is considered a major transportation corridor that's established in policy 1.8.1. It is not currently served by sanitary sewer, so as I mentioned earlier, if this request is approved, it would be required to connect to the sanitary sewer system. And the last is policy 1.8.3. The property does not meet the requirement for clustering or master planning. There are no industrial land use designations within approximately half-mile radius of this subject property. So staff takes that as requesting an isolated designation that does not meet the requirements and the intent of policy 1.8.3 of the comprehensive plan. There is a property directly south of this that has M1 zoning, but it is within the commercial high-intensity land use. It is not within the industrial land use. So if this were to be approved, it would be the only industrially designated property with industrial land use within approximately half-mile radius. Based on the information that staff had presented to us and available via the Brevard County property appraiser, it does not appear that this property has actual frontage on a roadway. Mr. Shahayab did speak with Brad Parrish, the planning manager, today, and provided some other documentation. However, I didn't have sufficient time to go through that and determine if the amount of roadway frontage, if there is any. So the portion on page 3 there, which is page 14 of your packet, which talks about section 28317, that was based on the information we had. If Mr. Shahayab has different information, he can certainly present that. The rest of that is simply just talking about the connection for a requirement to the sanitary sewer system. Those were the major issues that we identified through this. If you would like me to go into detail on any other portion of this, I'll be glad to. But if not, I was going to open it up to you all for questions.
Okay, let's do this first. Let's open it up to the public. And first card, please.
Sid Shihayab.
Okay.
Good evening to you. My name is Sid Shahayab. I'm with Consulting Civil Engineers, 3650 Bobby Lane, here in Titusville. This project, the only reason we are in front of you is because it's in a rural residential zoning, and it doesn't allow an office warehouse, basically, to be placed on the site. And I want to show you a couple, but first I want to go through a few of the comments that the staff had. And of course, they had a very good due diligence on this, because there's nothing around it that is zoned M1 other than the property to the south, which is AT&T, basically. This property, let me read this to you, just so that we understand, and then you can ask me any questions you may have. Pete, can we have one of those? The overall, basically. Yeah. Yeah, to start off with. Actually, turn. You want the other one? Yeah, right around. Okay. You can see from this plan that the airport property is all the blue or purple property, and our site is the green site. And the site to the south of it is the AT&T site. Now, to the north, there is two properties. Those are both airport properties. They're not residential. They're not rural residential or anything. This property is connected to the east with residential under the same ownership. And the business is run today from this property to the east as a home business. And what we are trying to do is move it to the west where it abuts Flake Road. Now, the public records, looking at the public records, indicate that there is a sliver of property that belongs to the airport between the subject property and the Flake Road, and that's not the case. There is only a piece of it, and we have enough right-of-way on Flake Road right-of-way. Now, if a Flake Road is a substandard right-of-way, city always asks for additional right-of-way to be included to the road to increase that right-of-way. And that's what AT&T did, is they gave the city additional right-of-way along that, almost to the edge of our property, the one that we have. So there is actual frontage on a public road. Flake Road, although it's substandard, it's always a case, in the design to ask for additional right-of-way, like 20 feet, 25 feet of the property, and we have that to give to the city as additional right-of-way, because within that right-of-way, too, the city has their wells, their water wells, the ones that they use, all the way along Flake Road. And that's not part of the city property, it's actually airport property. I'm going to go through the comments just briefly. First, it's policy 1.8.1 and 1.8.2. The subject property does not meet the criteria for access to roadway, including I-95 and State Road 405 and State Road 407. The subject property does not meet the criteria for level of service standards for transportation and is not currently served by sanitary sewer service. Now, the stated policy does not make any distinction, by the way, of between various types of intensities, of industrial uses. This is a light industrial use. It's the project designation is light industrial. That's what we are asking for. The existing business, which will move into this project, is owner-operated, and maximum they have today is 6 employees. And most of the services that come in and out of the deliveries, pickups, are made by smaller utility trucks. And they will be on Flake Road. They won't be on the other road, on Dixie, to the east. Now, since there is an existing city sewer connection on the east side, there is an existing city sewer connection, and we can have an easement on the residential piece, which is owned by the same ownership, to go to the sanitary sewer so that we have a public sanitary sewer to service the site. Okay? Now, we designed the site, in addition, we designed the site to meet all the requirement of the limited development, because it's in an area of a critical concern, and we did that on this site. The second one is policy 1.8.3. The subject property does not meet the criteria of clustering or master planning. The purpose of clustering of industrial land use designation is limited in limited areas, as stated in the future land use policy 1.8.3, is as stated in the policy for the purpose of maximizing employment centers. and convenient access to labor supply, raw material sources, and market areas. This is a small facility, which is, at best, may employ half a dozen employees or so. People have to be near a convenient labor supply. They don't have to be in a convenient labor supply. Raw material are only incubators. They are basically imported from Great Britain. That's what they use this facility for. Okay. How would this help to be clustered in a master planning? I'm not sure. Master plan industrial park. This is like a small area that we would like to use. Land development regulation. The property actually of the LDR establishes the criteria for M1 zoning district and requires a minimum of 50 feet. We have that 50 feet on a public right-of-way. And of course, we're going to go through plan preparation, construction plans, and we're going to go back and forth with the city, and probably the city is going to ask for additional right-of-way to be dedicated for Flake Road. Now, the warranty deed, which was transferred ownership of this property to the present owner dated May 15, 2014, is recorded in Public Record 7130, page 456. These documents show the most northerly portion of the property is 51.18 feet of the parcel. Western property line is contiguous to eastern right-of-way of Flake Road. So that part of the comment, it doesn't fit the site. And neither the city staff or us, we didn't have any record of it. So we had to research it with the actual county. We went to the county and they gave us plans showing that's the case. This property, they made a mistake in their public record. And we can have that, Pete. I think it's this one. Oh, this one. I have it. See? And the county was trying to make that change in the past couple of days. That's when we discovered that's the problem. You have that repeat this one. It looks like this.
I don't have any more. No.
How about the one that's color? This one. You will notice that, I'm sorry, here. You will notice the two properties to the north of the site, they are connected to, basically to Flake Road. And in the public record, it doesn't show it. It shows a sliver that's owned by the airport. Of course, that property to the north is owned by the airport, but the way they show it on the plan, on their public record, it's not correct. And it's being changed at the public record right now, so, okay? Make sense? The next one is the density and intensity of the proposed rezoning and use shall be consistent with the development in the area. Basically, the development in the area is the airport and AT&T to the south. And to the north, you have the county public facilities on the northwest corner of the airport, or north side of the airport. There is a public facility that use this road too. So While the two parcels to the north may be rezoned RR, they're not occupied and are both owned by the airport authority, those two parcels. Since they were purchased with federal and state fund for safety or operational purposes, these properties cannot be sold and or converted to housing. So parcels just to the east are indeed primary single-family residential, but are built on lots substantially larger than the minimum half-acre lots allowed under the RR zoning. The parcel to the immediately to the east owned by and occupied by the applicant as both their existing home business as well as the residence. And the next one is not likely to cause depreciation of property values in the area because most of the property along Flake Road is not residential, is not going to be residential in the future. It's either airport or AT&T, and this would be, if the commission allows us to do this, this would be an M1 zoning, which is light industrial. This proposed project will not cause a nuisance to surrounding property for the same reason stated in the response to comment 3A up top. So the next one is the application is consistent with the zoning of the area. Staff comment, the development standards and the allowable uses within the proposed M1 zoning are more intense than some of the surrounding zoning designation. I mean, we have airport, we have AT&T to the south, we have the Brevard County Public building. So our response, please note that the land directly to the east of this parcel is owned and occupied by the applicant. The residential land to the north is not occupied and is owned by the airport authority, and it cannot be sold or used as a residence. The property to the south is AT&T. The proposed project will not cause nuisance to surrounding properties. And the next one is that the applicant will protect the public health, safety, morals, and or welfare of general public. Our response, while the M1 zoning does not allow variety of uses, this proposal will not negatively affect the public health, safety, morals, of welfare. But because it's in an area where the access is to Flake Road. Buffering and screening, we have plenty of buffering and screening around the property. Well, the only reason we want this property is rezoned is to be able to use it. Basically, that's what we would like to do, is use it for light manufacturing. Basically, that's what it is, and it's mainly mail order, doing some business there. One of the things industrial, light industrial services, warehousing services, storage, repair, and light manufacturing, minimum lot size 5,000. This lot size is 1.6. And I'm not sure if I touch base on the, can I have the aerial? Second. Is this the aerial? One of them? Okay. If you notice where the new building is going to be, where's the new building? And then where the business is being operated now, it's only like maybe 200 or 300 feet. Yeah, you better, yeah. Okay. Okay. This is where the new building, yeah.
This is the AT&T facility. This is the adjoining property where they're highway, Lake Road down here.
Okay? And I'm open for any questions you may have.
Okay. Member Ritchie, did you have something you wanted to ask him?
I have several questions, actually. So, kind of directing it to both staff and yourself. The property that's owned by the airport between Flake Road and the property, you're saying that that's not the case?
It's not there is a sliver of a property between, and it's a triangular piece, but our property abuts Flake Road. Now, one thing I want to, we are working with the airport authority today with Michael Powell and the airport engineer, the one that actually does the design. And we had a lengthy communications with them, and they're willing to work with us because the same property owns a triangular piece. It's sitting on the airport property to the south.
Right.
And what we're going to do is transfer that property to the airport, and the airport is willing to work with us on getting to Flake Road, and possibly that property that's owned by the airport would go into a public right-of-way. Because that's what happened down to a little further to the south with AT&T. They actually had the 25 feet, and they added some additional right-of-way to make it 50 feet right-of-way for the city.
Do you have any?
The sliver that we talk about that is owned by the airport extends, it's in a triangular piece right here.
Right.
It's the same color as the airport property. There's 51.18 feet of land of right-of-way that this property abuts to satisfy the requirements of 50 feet. The property that Sid mentioned that is owned by the same parcel is this triangular piece down
Yeah, I saw that.
on the airport side of the right-of-way.
Yeah, I saw
and
that.
That property is about 6,600 square feet. In our conversations with the airport authority,
You're going to ask him to get on the
they're
mic?
happy to do a swap.
Is that it?
I'm going to need to have Mr. Pierce speak at the microphone and fill out a card.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Let's come closer. Because
Okay. We have been in contact with the airport authority, and they are more than happy to do a swap in land so that we can give them that 6,600 square feet of land, triangular piece that is on their side of the property. It's more contiguous with their airport property. And also, that land really is not going to be a swap with us. We're going to be converting that land so that the right-of-way width on Flake Road will be, across our property, would be the full 50 feet. Right now, across AT&T, it is almost 50 feet for the whole entire length. It tapers back down to about 25 feet across most of our property. We will be taking that triangular piece and doing whatever we have to do to convert that into an additional 25-foot of right-of-way so that the right-of-way width across Flake Road, both for AT&T property as well as this particular project, will be a consistent 50-foot.
You have any comment?
Well, before we continue talking about this too much, I just want to, regardless of whether or not the property has continuous frontage along Flake Road or not, that's really not going to change the recommendation of staff. There are two portions of that staff report that reference that there is no lot frontage. However, the bigger issues from a staff standpoint are the inconsistencies with the comprehensive plan. As I've said before, this would be a very isolated spot of industrial. Placing that there, we have no plan for that. The comprehensive plan doesn't specify that. It actually specifically says the air-related facility within the city is the Space Coast Regional Airport, not the Arthur Dunn Air Park. And so our concerns lie more heavily on the comprehensive plan and the inconsistencies there than the lack of roadway frontage. That issue probably could be resolved with the airport, whether or not I would like to see a certified survey before I can provide input on whether or not that property actually has roadway frontage or not. I appreciate that Sid went back and did the research, but I didn't receive that until about 4:45 this afternoon. I've had very little time to go over it, and so until I see something from a certified surveyor, I'm not comfortable saying whether or not it has frontage or not. Additionally, in terms of what, the surrounding property conditions, I understand the airport owns several of those properties around there. There is the AT&T site. south of there. I do want to say that in 1993, when it was Bell South at the time, whenever they came in and requested that property be rezoned to M1, staff at that time as well recommended denial to the P&Z and City Council. They had similar concerns that there was no other industrial in the area, there was insufficient access, or what they felt was insufficient access due to the roadways around there. Ultimately, as it is illustrated today, City Council did approve that request. However, the staff at that time mirrored the same concerns that we have today, in that this area may not be completely appropriate for industrial uses. I understand that what is being proposed is just an office and warehouse. However, the M1 zoning district allows for a wide variety of other uses that are much more intense than simply a warehouse and office. Some of those uses include light manufacturing, machine shops, automobile repair, bottling plants, things of that nature that aren't as innocuous as maybe a warehouse could be. And while Mr. Pierce may own this for some time, if 20 years down the road someone wants to come in and put a more intense use in there, that would be allowed by right in that zoning district. And so when we talk about the differing levels of intensity, while the airport may own that property today, that may not be the case for for the long term. I can't answer to that, but our purpose is to make sure that those surrounding zoning designations are compatible with each other and will work well together. And so that is where our concerns lie, and that's why we had that recommendation that we did. So that's.
I also had a question. You have the two properties to the north that you say the airport owns. There's a building on the first lot, and I don't know what it is. On the second lot, there's a building that definitely looks like a residential house. I don't really understand, if the airport owns this, how a residential house would be on that property.
Yeah, the airport owns them, but they are vacant property, and you can't have
Well, it's
housing.
not vacant according to this aerial view.
No, it's not vacant because you have a house there, but it's vacant today because they don't have any residents there.
There's nobody living in it?
I'm sorry,
There's nobody living in it, but
No.
it is zoned residential.
it's zoned residential, yes,
So
but
they
it's
could
owned by the
essentially
airport.
sell it as a residential lot?
I don't think the airport can sell it. The airport cannot sell properties. This is money of the state,
I guess I'm confused as
had-
to why there's a house on there. Somebody built that house. I mean,
That's before the airport bought it.
The airport authority bought those two particular pieces of property, and based upon our written communications with the airport authority, they told us emphatically that when they purchase property with state and federal funds for their safety and operations of the airport, they cannot sell that property. They cannot convert it to housing. I mean, that's the reason they bought it, was because it's in the end of their runway. It happens to be the grass strip, but it's also a safety problem. So they bought those properties with federal and state monies. And so now they can't convert it to housing.
Are you the owner, sir?
This is a correction. This is Peter Ticelli. He's with our firm. He's with Consulting Civil
Yeah.
Engineers. But, I didn't
I
get a
work with
chance
Sid.
to correct that, but I would like to correct that to the record, please.
Well, I thought at first I heard you call him, and then I heard staff. I
But
heard you call him Mr. Pierce, and I was like, okay,
But the applicant owns this property directly to the east of the subject
Yes,
property.
yes, ma'am. Yeah.
And he lives there?
They live in the same house.
And he
Yes,
also
ma'am.
does a business from his home,
Yes, ma'am.
which is the business that you're wanting to put on this piece of property.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And the applicant is and his spouse. His spouse is right here, Pascal Pierce. And but the applicant, Mr. Pierce, he is not feeling well tonight, and so he couldn't make it to the meeting. But if there was any questions, we can ask Mrs. Pierce if a question from the owner.
Trevor, you're saying that the airport does not count as a air facility, that it only goes to the Space Coast Regional?
Yes, the comprehensive plan designates in that policy 1.8.1, it designates what is considered like major transportation facilities. It designates specific roadways, the majority of the properties along the railroad, if they're in an industrial park, and then it specifically designates the Space Coast Regional Airport as an air-related facility. It does not mention at all in there the Arthur Dunn Air Park. And I think a lot of that has to do also with there was some time ago that the airport and the city worked closely together to come up with a set of overlay regulations to help protect both the airport and the air park. And it was their intent, and based on the master plan that I reviewed for the air park here, the intent was to concentrate the industrial type uses at the regional airport on the south side of the city and to support the ongoing like the skydiving facility and potentially put a school in there for that sort of thing, but to not really increase the more or less private industrial uses around there. It would be the airport would support uses that were airport related, but not necessarily additional private infrastructure. Now, I did speak to Michael Powell as well, and he did say that they don't have any objection to what is being proposed. But based on their master plan that the airport authority adopted, there's no discussion in there of other industrial uses. And as far as our comprehensive plan is concerned, only the Space Coast Regional Airport is identified in there as being an air-related facility for these types of uses.
I think
Good. Okay. Anything else?
Well, one thing that I like to add, if you look at the plan that the staff generated, which is this one, you can see the red, which is the AT&T site, and you can see the one just to the north of it, which is the site that we have discussion about, and that's the only site that could be developed as an M1 zoning, as a like office warehouse or something like light industrial. That's the only one left. There's nothing you can do. And you can't have residential on there, and then have it on Flake Road. I mean, basically, if we build a place and somebody builds a house on there, and then he has to enter it from Flake Road. So, in reality, this is what. And on the other hand, I mean, they are using the home business from a next door, about maybe 200 feet. The only thing we're saying is we want to move that business. We don't care what zoning we get, as long as we can use that in there, in that vicinity. And then we want to have like a separate access to it. And Flake Road is a public road. It's not a private road. It's a public road, owned by the city.
Trevor,
the county owned it first, and then it gave it to the city.
Trevor, that's zoned residential. What would they possibly be able to do with that if it can't be?
Well, right now, I mean, in the rural residential zoning, you can basically do single-family type uses. Single-family homes on half-acre lots is the primary use that's allowed in that zoning district.
So you're saying that it would only be able to be used for residential, but they would have access off of Flake Road?
The lot that we're talking about, the subject property?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, it could be worked out that they have some kind of easement across the other property to get to North Dixie, but essentially, yeah, right, as it's zoned currently, yeah, the allowable uses are essentially single family.
Okay, is that it? Member Noel Copeland, question?
There's a map on page 20 and another one on 24, and the zoning is different. So I'm just trying to figure out what's the current zoning. On 24, it shows the property south as already M1, and on 20, it says that property is CH1. So what's the current zoning?
So the map on page 20 that you see there, that is a future land use map.
Okay.
That is the comprehensive plan designation. That CHI stands for commercial high intensity. It was a practice of the city some years ago to allow the M1 zoning within that commercial high intensity. That was changed in the comprehensive plan a couple years ago, maybe 3 years ago, to no longer allow that. So that situation that you have on the property to the south would no longer be allowed today if someone else came in and requested that. But to answer your question, the map on page 20, the red you see there is commercial high intensity for the land use, the future land use designation of the comprehensive plan. And the map on page 24, that is the existing zoning map. So the M1 that you see there, that is the light industrial service and warehousing is the full title of that M1.
So that's the current zoning.
Of the property to the south,
Right.
correct.
Right.
That is correct.
And so then the property to the east, which is on page 20, residential 2, is currently general use?
Is currently that green color that you see there under the RES2. Okay, sorry, yes, excuse me. To the east on the map on page 24, it is general use. Yes, that is correct for that zoning.
And so what can they do with general use?
General use is essentially an agricultural, it's a very low intensity agricultural type zoning district. It allows all kinds of different agricultural uses. It allows for single family homes at a density of 1 unit per 3 acres, so very low intensity as far as residential goes. In those sorts of kind of low intensity, many times you see the general use on kind of the fringes of the city where there's not a whole lot of development yet, and then many times people will request to rezone those properties once development is proposed. In this case, the zoning was never requested to be changed, and so it remains general use.
So if they're running this business off of this general use property today, if the property in question was zoned general use, could they do what they want to do in that property if they're currently doing it on a general use property right next door?
Based on the proposal that we've seen, no. And the reason that I say that is because it's my understanding that what's being done now is kind of a much smaller scale than what will be done out of this proposed warehouse and office space. It's my understanding now that basically they are the products are imported and then they're redistributed, kind of like a sending and receiving, which does fit more or less the intent of the home-based business criteria in the code. They're generally limited to, you don't have a sign, you don't have customers coming and going, you don't have other employees. It's basically if you're just having FedEx or UPS drop off packages periodically and sending them back out, that meets the criteria. Whereas what they're proposing now is a much larger scale of that, with having other employees and office space and potentially bigger vehicles sending and receiving those units, which does not fit.
I thought that they had stated that they were already doing this business.
Correct. The business is occurring,
with the same employees, everything the same.
That was not my understanding. If that was the case, that would not be permitted as a home-based business.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was my understanding about what you said about the business today.
They actually receive and distribute, and basically with the small truck delivery and small pickup from the USPS, UPS, and Federal Express. And that could be done from any business. We have it in our house. We had it when my wife was working from home business. We had deliveries like this, and but I'm not sure. If you look at this too, if you look at that property to the south is AT&T. How much more traffic is going to that little piece will generate? That's what really I don't understand. Because you have a very intense use at the AT&T site down to the south. And this is the only property just to the north of it that could be used for anything. Now, I'm not sure what the objection is. I thought the staff is actually working with us, trying to find a solution to it. And they are running into a code issue. And I'm not sure what to do other than put it in front of you guys, to look at it and say, this is a simple thing to look at. It's not like a major thing. And what's the worst thing going to happen? You have a tremendous amount of buffer to the north, to the east. At least you have 100 feet buffer. There is a lake right in the middle. If you look at the aerial, there's nothing going to be developed to the east. So the buffering is a great buffering all the way around the property. And we are 430 feet away from the intense residential along Dixie Highway.
Okay.
If I may, before we move on, we did meet with Mr. Shahai before this application was submitted, and Brad and I both relayed to him that this would be difficult for us to support from a comprehensive plan standpoint, from a planning standpoint, due to the issues that we've already discussed. That being said, I understand that the use that is being proposed now could be considered lower intensity for an industrial use. However, as we've all experienced in the past, there is no guarantee that use will continue, and so we are looking out for the other uses and things that could be requested in the future in that area, and taking those kind of calculations into our consideration of this. So I just wanted to make that clear, that it's not that this specific use may cause issues and it may not because of the intensity of it. However, the zoning district that's been requested is not limited just to this one use. It will allow anything in M1, and that is where our concerns lie along with that.
Can I add one thing to this? This property is in a critical area of a critical concern. There is a certain amount of development you can put on this property, and you can't increase it. Unless you are such a genius, you come up with a way to increase the amount of impervious surface you can put on the site. This is it, 6,000 square feet. That's all we're putting there. And plus, on top of that, we are using some of the parking spaces. We're putting impervious concrete just to have like an overflow parking, and that's it.
Okay, Member Baker.
I just want to make sure I fully understand, and I'm not sure that I really do at the moment. So there is not a commercial zoning that could be put on this property to be able to have a business there.
That is correct for this type of business.
Yes,
because
not industrial, but.
We discussed that with Mr. Shahai as well whenever we first started on this, and we couldn't come up with any use that's allowable in our commercial zoning designations that this would fall under to make this less of a large increase in intensity. So we did explore those options and just were unable to come to anything that would work.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
One other thing, I want to apologize to the staff for not getting the information about the right-of-way earlier, and the right-of-way information did not come in till Friday, late Friday, and that came from the county, and that's the reason they didn't have it. And I didn't know. I mean, I actually was negotiating with the airport authority to have an access and have the access through their property to get to Flake Road. But later on, we found out that we have 51 feet on Flake Road on a public right-of-way.
Okay. Member Ritchie.
You were saying that the AT&T property to the south, the future land use is commercial high intensity, and you're saying that they can't utilize that?
That's correct. It was not necessarily just for this property, but other areas in the city, they were allowing M1 zoning in that commercial high-intensity land use, and it was causing issues. And so it was the city council directed staff to come up with an amendment to the comprehensive plan that would no longer allow the M1 zoning district to be placed in the commercial high-intensity land use. That was accomplished, and so since 2013, it is now considered inconsistent to place a new property into the M1 zoning classification if the future land use is commercial high intensity. And so that's the policy that we've been following since then, because that's what the comprehensive plan requires.
So you're saying the M1 cannot be incorporated into the commercial high intensity. Is there anything else that can be incorporated into it?
A wide variety of our commercial zoning designations, but that goes back to what Member Baker brought up, that we tried to find a commercial use that potentially could have been or commercial zoning district that could have been placed there, and we were just unable to find a use in one of those commercial designations that would allow this to happen.
Okay.
So my understanding, when that went through, that was kind of a stopgap measure because we had warehouses popping up everywhere. And I recall one of the last ones was somewhere near Garden Street, but not on Garden Street. And then thereafter, this was the solution to that. So we knew at the time that this would eliminate putting warehouses anywhere in Titusville. The intent was specifically for this. Not for this, but I have more to say about this later. But I'm just saying it was so that they didn't proliferate everywhere, and they wanted to cluster lighter commercial, industrial in certain areas.
Correct, and a lot of it, I think, also came from the variety of uses that are along Hopkins Avenue. This has obviously nothing to do with this request, but that was part of the reason that council directed staff to come up with that was because of the conditions that were starting to occur along Hopkins and some of the other corridors that maybe weren't necessarily the best location for those sorts of uses.
Okay. Were there any other cards on this? No, sir. Okay, I'll close this to the public then. Secretary Chambers.
I got one question. If this fails to go through, do you have any other options you're looking at to use this property in some other way?
If it doesn't go through?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what was the question? Like,
Do you have some other options that you're looking at that if this doesn't go through, that you can use this property for?
well, I think we went through that avenue with the staff, and I think this is the only zoning that could allow the use for something like this. And as I said, this is an isolated condition. It's like as if we are asking for a Board of Adjustment and Appeals to say, please, this is a hardship. Basically, we can't do anything with this. We are on Flake Road. It's a public road. It's a commercial, but we can't, we can't do anything with it. And M1 zoning allows us to do just that. It allows us to do this type of a business. And I don't know if there's anything else we can do. And I don't think the staff, I think they exhausted all possibilities because they usually work with us on this.
But I thought you said that the M1 is not being used in this type of a business anymore since 2013, right?
No, that would be we could not apply the commercial high-intensity land use and then allow M1. The type of use that's being proposed is allowable in the M1 zoning district. That's not the issue. The issue is that the staff doesn't feel that based on the comprehensive plan that this is an appropriate location to put this type of land use and zoning.
It's the location that's...
Correct.
Okay.
And with that, the property could be used in the rural residential zoning. I mean, they could put a single-family home in there. The likelihood of that is probably rather low because it is in close proximity to the air park. But there's nothing that prohibits it from being used in its current zoning designation as far as from a zoning standpoint.
Okay, so I've tried to stay silent about some of this because I wanted to hear everybody speak, and a lot of things that I was thinking kind of came out at different times. So I really actually did my homework on this one. And the reason why I did my homework is because I actually had staff saying a recommendation for denial. I'm like, oh, wow. We don't see that very often. And generally when we do see that, I'm like, okay, I'm on board with staff. I understand their concerns. I would actually appreciate it more if staff would maybe recommend denial on more items. In this particular case, it made me look at what you were looking at. And so I've been in this area, and I looked at the maps, and I went to Google Maps, and my first thing that I saw was, the business, the home-based business. Well, I had no idea that this was the same business. I thought, oh, well, if they're doing it, I thought it was a home-based business, and I looked up the website, and I looked at the incubators, and I thought, wow. So then, when I'm going through Google Maps, I'm looking at, I think you saw the house. I didn't think that was a house. I thought that was some industrial building. And then I see storage sheds. Then I see hangars. And in this entire area, it is industrial setting. I consider we'll call it a park, and that's what we do. And that was to differentiate the difference between, they intentionally did that. But in turn, it created a situation to where they can't develop on this property. The intent for that was, when this was all changed, was to cluster industrial uses, yes. But it was intentionally left out of this because my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I recall in the 90s when the airport wanted to expand and they were buying up properties and there was a big scare, I guess, for the residents there. I think it was the 90s, maybe early 2000s. I remember people talking. They were afraid the airport was going to encroach on their property. I know I'm bouncing around here, but I actually have a lot to say on this. So apparently they did buy properties. They didn't rezone it. Why they didn't rezone it, I don't understand why. But public, in my opinion, public land or public zoning is about as industrial as you can get sometimes. If you look at the entire airport area, okay, you have the sanitation trucks that are in there. You have infill in there. That is an M3 technically use. If anybody's been to the airport, years ago I was asked to buy a home there. And I said, oh no, I'd never buy a home here because I heard those single engine planes are about as loud as you can get. And I was actually on William Street and I didn't know, I'm trying to not cuss here, but I could not believe the noise that came from one of those planes. So to try to make things short on this area, this entire area is about as industrial as you can get. So to have an enclave of residential, true residentials, because everything else they can't use. And we know this. Why they don't rezone it, I don't know, but it doesn't matter. But in this particular area, I look at compatibility. And the first thing I look at is AT&T. Then I look at the airport, and I look at the hangars there. And I go a little bit farther down the road, and I have the Brevard County Road and Bridge Division. I go, if I traveled, I don't know, what is that, south? I don't know. But were the buildings that you were talking about, those are industrial nature as well. This entire area is nothing but industrial. Now, the intent of the changes was to cluster industrial, and it was to protect the airports. Then in turn, it was not, I don't believe it was intended to hurt businesses like this so that they can't develop. It is a shame that we couldn't do some type of light industrial, use with M1. I mean, it really is. And that would help limit it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but was it general use or that you could put graveyards on, or was it the...
That is correct, yeah.
Okay. As well as that is a very intense use as well. So then I also go back to something that we did this year, or last year, was with Kmart. So that was a use that we're going to be putting in boxed internal storage units, which is an M1 category, totally incompatible with the area because it's next to residential 1, and that's acceptable. And I'm not trying to dismiss you on this, but that was something that city staff supported.
That's correct, mainly because everything would be conducted indoors. There is no outdoor storage allowed with it. So we differentiated that from your typical mini warehouse because of the difference in form and how the operations are conducted. But I understand where
I'm going with that is this is something that I can understand that it does not quite fit. It doesn't fit some of the, what do you call it? You had 3 of them. But I don't quite, I see the usage that they're wanting to do as about the only usage you could really do because nobody's going to want to put a house there. It's an unusable piece of property for a residential, and the most you could possibly put there is 2 and 3 houses. But the fact of the matter is who would we even want to put 1? So it's an unusable piece of property. To put a light commercial piece of property there would probably be the best use of that land because you're not putting somebody that could be potentially there 24/7. You're having limited business hours. You're limiting the actual risk to the airport, and that was the intent was for them to buy up to limit if there was something that goes wrong. So I truly, truly appreciate, I mean, I would really like to see the staff come more denying items. I truly would. And I say this with the utmost sincerity because there's a lot of times that I say to staff, I would rather it be killed at the staff level than it make it all the way up here. Because then we're set with the decision to say no. And but in this particular case, I know that it doesn't fit quite the comprehensive codes, but I don't think the comprehensive codes fit this area either. And so for those reasons, and I know I rambled on a long time ago, I do think that it is, it should go through. I can't say it's completely fits perfect, but for the intent that they're wanting to use, it actually does fit perfect. My thoughts. Vice Chairman Shavir.
I have mixed feelings about this. On the one hand, I agree with the chairman. On the other hand, I agree with staff. And if you look at the map here where this business is going to be located, it's surrounded by residential properties and some vacant land. And the AT&T property is not that intense. I mean, on business, I'm sorry, it's just not an intense business. There's not, yes, you have traffic in and out during the day, but the amount of traffic that goes in and out of that place is minimal. So I don't see that as really a problem per se. And actually, it's probably a pretty good neighbor to residential folks that live there. And I just see this as an encroachment on residential properties in the area. I really do. I don't think we should be having this little cluster of commercial business, even though that's the way it's established and it's gone that way. I don't think we should be adding to it, quite frankly. And I think that when you start that and you have this little district, if you will, of businesses surrounded by residential properties, I think you just open up the door for future generations to expand that and have those residential properties slowly disappear until the whole area becomes commercial. So that's just my comment.
Are there any other questions or comments? Okay. With that, I guess I would request for us a motion on this. Do I have a motion?
I had mixed feelings on this as well, but you quelched some of that. But I'm going to make a motion to approve the small-scale amendment SSA number 4-2017 with rezoning.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we have roll call on this?
Member Baker? Vice Chairman Shavir?
No.
Member Ritchie?
Yes.
Secretary Chambers?
No.
Member Noel Copeland?
Yes.
Chairman Williams?
Yes.
Member Baker?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. So, with that, when does this go to council?
This will be before council on the 9th and then again at the 23rd meeting.
And so that we get the reasons for no, if you would, each member that voted no, if you give your reasons to staff so that they can document this. And
Well, I happen to agree with staff's comments for not approving this, the inconsistencies in it. And as I stated myself, that as time goes on, if you have this cluster of commercial business, so to speak, in this area, the end result years down the road is that it keeps expanding because you have this pocket of business, and the residential properties eventually will disappear or become dilapidated and fall into disrepair, and that devalues the property, and away we go, changing that whole residential area into a commercial area.
Please, for the record, could you list the comprehensive plan policies that are the basis for your denial?
there's the three.
The numbers that are in the report?
I'm sorry?
She's talking about the three that they listed.
They're on page 14 of your packet, about halfway down the page.
Okay, it's policy, the reason for denial are the inconsistencies and that are on page 14 of 53, and that's policy 1.8.1, 1.8.2, and 1.8.3. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Chambers.
I voted negative because too many inconsistencies. Until some of these are cleaned up, and I can't see why with some work they couldn't be, some of them. It should be held until that happens. Some of these, that M1 and some of those other ones that are involved in this setting up this type of property in that area should be looked at again and fixed before we go on with something else.
Okay. Thank you. So then, Member Baker.
And even though I voted yes, I would still like to just say that I very much agree with what the staff has said, but I'm also having a major issue with some of the things that Mr. Shahab has brought up, and I only voted yes with the hopes that there can be a relook at this a few more times with the new information that you have, and hopefully staff could come to some sort of agreement somehow. But that was the only reason I voted yes, just to let you know.
I want to add something real quick, though, too, is that I truly believe that we should have included the air park with this, because it is better to have commercial use than residential use around the air park. And, you know, by omitting that, it basically created a barrier for changes like this. So anyway, so we were talking about, when's this go to council again? You said
The 9th and the 23rd of this month.
you said you've been around the block many times on this, so you know exactly what you need to do. And
Yeah, thank you very much.
okay, next item, please.
Thank you.
Okay, item 9B starts on page 28 in your packet. This is just a sketch plat for a proposed subdivision. The Brookshire subdivision is a proposed 176-lot subdivision on approximately 80.66 acres located west of Interstate 95 and north of Garden Street. On September 26, 2017, City Council approved a rezoning of a portion of the property that abuts Garden Street from R2, multifamily medium-density residential, to R1C, single-family medium high-density. Currently, the property is zoned both R1B and R1C. As far as the concurrency statement on here, the 176-lot single-family subdivision meets all level of service standards for concurrency-related facilities: water and sewer, transportation, parks and recreation, stormwater, and solid waste. Impacts to the level of service standard for school concurrency will be evaluated with the preliminary plat. And their preliminary plat is basically the engineering work that goes on that's reviewed by staff, and that's approved administratively. The sheets that you see there that follow, those are basically the illustrations of the layout of the subdivision, and the number of lots, where the retention, just the basic layout. And so this is just a typical sketch plat, like it is for any subdivision that comes through. I did want to say that we did work with the engineer to try to come up with several different options to help hopefully preserve some of the property. In the end, we weren't able to come to an agreement on what worked for them as far as making the development feasible economically, and use an alternative option such as a conservation subdivision or something like that. But we appreciate the engineer at least entertaining our ideas. And with that, I'll try to answer any questions, and Mr. Honeycutt is here as well.
Okay, we'll open this to the public. Mr. Honeycutt?
Good evening, Rodney Honeycutt, 3700 South Washington Avenue here in Titusville. And so we're requesting the sketch plat approval for Brookshire subdivision, 176 lots on 80 acres. It's about 2.1 units per acre. Same thing as we talked about in our rezoning when we came through this a few weeks ago, maybe months ago. And we did work with staff on trying to make a conservation subdivision, and I really had some comments on that. The conservation subdivision allows smaller lots so you can cluster, but the setbacks are not reduced. So the advantage of this, you kind of lose that advantage. And we talked to the developer about, can you use smaller houses, and it didn't really work. So, but we tried it. In the other case, since this is an area critical concern, all the lots are at least 10,000 square feet. So they are probably 25 to 33% larger than they would be if the lots weren't that large. And so by being that large, there's going to be more space, that's green space on each lot. And so, and we have to meet the impervious area in the area of critical concern. There are 2 wells on the east side of 95, the other side, and so we're in some of the well area, and so that makes the impervious area even smaller. So we have to meet all of those things also on the site. So there will be a lot less impervious area on this site than there would be an equal 80-acre site at another location. So just to let you know that. So if there are any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them.
The FDOT land, was that the land, did you guys give that to FDOT?
It's my understanding that land was taken by eminent domain for a stormwater pond and probably fill more than anything. And it's really weird how they shaped it. I mean, you would have thought it would have been a triangle or a rectangle or a square. But anyway, that made this site challenging. Another thing that makes the site challenging is there's large elevation changes too. And in the area of critical concern, there are a lot of restrictions on that, so we have to make that work also.
Member Baker? Huh? You were good?
Oh, no, I have a lot to say.
Okay.
I don't have a question.
Okay. Well, I see no questions then.
Okay. Well, I would like to...
Let's close this to the public.
Sorry.
All you now.
I would like to say that I do have a lot of information about this. This is a application for Florida Forever that was made by citizens for the same piece of property that was actually passed by Florida Forever. They received lots and lots of applications, and almost nothing gets through. And yet this piece of property, because it is a virgin piece of property and absolutely gorgeous and full of wildlife, was passed. The issue has been, it was not a funded program the year afterwards, so it was not purchased. So this absolutely beautiful piece of property it looks like, going to be completely denuded. There won't be probably one tree left on it by the time it's done. The areas somewhere over here where you see the OR zoning in the 2 areas, there is a tree that's big enough that 3 of us can't get our arms around it. And I'm sure it won't happen to be in a spot that it won't get bulldozed either. This is just, in my opinion, a horrible, horrible thing to do to one of the most beautiful pieces of property in Brevard County, and probably the biggest tree in the East Coast. The only reason that tree is still there is because it's down in enough of a valley that when the winds come across from the hurricanes, it hasn't taken it out. So the other issue for this property, besides its beauty, is the fact that, as Mr. Honeycutt stated, the wells are just right there. And I don't know if any of you understand that Titusville is not on the Floridian aquifer, that we do not have the only water we get is what goes into the ground. And that's why city staff is so concerned about making sure that we preserve anything in the area of critical concern, because if it's not going into the ground, we can't pull it out. We do not have the Floridian aquifer underneath us. So years ago, St. John's Water Management informed City of Titusville that we could no longer buy the 1 million gallons a day from Cocoa that they were buying, that they had to find another water source. And so they were able to come up with another source, being Miami Corp, who gets their water, it's like out of South Volusia County. And so we now purchase our water, or a portion of our water, from Miami Corp, where they have a lot of land themselves. And now that the market is going up again, we lease this. They can decide they don't want to sell us water and use it for their own properties, develop their own properties. So I have a real problem with paving over an area that before the city of Titusville started buying their water from Miami Corp, this well field produced 2/3 of the water for the city of Titusville. We've had a lot of development since then, not just homes, but businesses also. And we're all in the same boat. This is where our water comes from. So I'm definitely voting against this.
I can bring in more information at the next meeting, but the relationship with the Miami Corporation is a partnership between the City of Titusville and the Miami Corporation in Farmton. It's called TIFA, and that is a public-private partnership where we share the responsibility and ownership and maintenance of the wellfield area and obtain both the profit and the cost of maintaining the wellfield area. And then when that water is used, there is profit that is generated and shared by both Farmton and the City of Titusville. So I don't know that it is exactly a lease relationship or that we're buying it from them, but I can bring in more information to explain the TIFA relationship to you guys. But I know that we're not directly buying it from them. It is a partnership.
Okay, well, that was the information that I was given at the time that this was done, was that we were purchasing water from them. And the one thing that I asked repeatedly is, can that be revoked? And I was told, yes, it can be revoked. So I don't know what's changed since then. I haven't followed up on it.
I thought, what was the deal with Scottsmore? Was it Scottsmore where this is at?
It's up in that area. It's up much further north in the county than the city limits are, yes.
Yeah, I thought they were putting wells there, but so when you said Miami Corp, just kind of threw me off. But anything else?
I think that pretty well covered everything.
So I just wanted to add that this was previously zoned, and they had this was actually a reduction, I thought, in units an acre. So while I appreciate what you're saying, and I do agree with what you're saying, the project that was previously approved was actually at a higher density and that they could have developed, and then they came in and reduced this to 177, is that what this is, units?
176.
176. So it was a reduction, although, hopefully, how do you handle the area critical concern? Does it become each property can only have 25% each parcel?
It's been a while since we've had a subdivision within this close of proximity, and actually Mr. Honeycutt may have more experience with it than I do because I typically don't review these subdivisions for the area of critical concern standards. But basically, yes, there's a table that is included with a subdivision as it goes through the platting process, and they figure out a maximum amount of impervious surface for every lot in the subdivision, and that's what regulates the overall amount that can go in. And so that's why in some areas that people have issues, specifically on the subdivisions off of Sisson Road. There are sometimes issues there if someone buys a home and then wants to put it in a swimming pool. That's a significant amount of increase on the amount of impervious, and if they're going to exceed that maximum that's allowed for that lot, then they're not allowed to, to install whatever it is, a pool or a screened-in porch or whatever it is, because those maximums are put in place there.
The maximum is like 40% with credits?
It depends. Some of them are, there was common areas set aside so that every lot may be able to have 50% instead of 40% because the subdivision set aside a large chunk of land for preservation or something like that. It varies from subdivision to subdivision. But there is a maximum for each lot, yes.
But anyway, I'm just making it the point that I appreciate what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying. It's just that in this particular case, no matter, it's gone so far, it's just a matter of approving it. It will get built, I guess. For this to be denied is only a small, it only stalls it, and I can't see City Council denying it, but I do agree that, we do need to start. Who was it? Michael Myjack came to us when I was on the Environmental Commission years ago. Said we're running out of water, and said, well, what if we do something about it? I'm not trying to make this a joke, but I said, okay, so if we take the measures to do something, what's going to happen? We're going to run out of water. And I'm like, so. And he was saying in 20 years, I think, or something like that, or 10 years, I don't know. But we have to find alternate sources, and we've known that.
I thought this was already approved.
It is already approved for the zoning and all that. It's just finalizing the makeup of the subdivision itself.
Cul-de-sac? Oh, okay.
Yeah, basically the map that you're looking at
Yeah.
is they're saying this is what we're going to do. Here's your plans. So, is it Member Hare?
Mm-hmm. I would like to ask a question of staff. Is Mr. Lindman aware of the school concurrency?
Is your microphone on?
It was on. Is Mr. Lindman aware of this project? Has he been talking to Brad or?
If he's not, he will be made he will be made aware once they go through the preliminary site plan. Mm-hmm. Typically, in my conversations with him, he is more concerned when we do a land use amendment that, in this case, as the chairman said, whenever they rezoned, they actually reduced the maximum allowable density. So I don't think there will be any concerns from a school concurrency standpoint, but we will certainly get in contact with Mr. Lindeman and make sure he knows about what's going on.
The large number of houses that you have, plus the other projects, is
Sure.
going to make a big impact in the schools.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So yeah, we've been keeping him aware of what's going on as much as possible. Every time something comes up that we think he should know about, we involve him.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so we've closes the public. Is there any other discussion on this item? Okay, do we have a motion on this item? Please do.
What motion do we have outside of take no action? Or approve the sketch plan? Or do not approve the sketch plan?
Those are our options.
Those are the options.
Approve or disapprove.
In this situation, these sketch plats are basically just a conceptual review, and before these come before you in city council, city staff basically make sure that they meet the minimum lot size requirements and all. They basically meet the minimum requirements of the zoning district. In this case, it meets the minimum requirements of the zoning district, and so it's moving forward as any other typical subdivision would. So,
okay, Vice Chairman Shabir.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the Brookshire subdivision sketch plat.
I'll second that.
Okay, can we take a vote on this?
Secretary Chambers,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Shavir,
Yes.
Member Baker,
No.
Member Noel Copeland,
Yes.
Member Ritchie,
Yes.
Chairman Williams.
Yes. And for the record, if you would explain the reasons for voting no.
My reasons for voting no are I cannot support the rape of a piece of virgin property that's on our well field.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And then we'll go to the last item? Or?
Yeah, item 9C starts on page 38 of your agenda. Sorry, I'm just finishing up taking some notes here. Okay, item 9C is rezoning number 5-2017 from the Highway Industrial Infill M3 zoning district to the Light Industrial Services and Warehousing M1 zoning district at 4325 South Street. The applicant, on behalf of the owner, is requesting to rezone an approximately 0.44 acre property located at 4325 South Street. The request is to rezone the vacant property from M3 zoning to M1 zoning within the industrial future land use designation. The reason for the request is that the property does not meet the minimum lot size requirement of 1 acre for the M3 zoning district currently applied to the property. The purpose of the rezoning is to create a lot that conforms to the zoning district and allow for the construction of a new 2,400 square foot building. In the research that the staff analysis that is on page 41 of your packet, staff attempted to go back and determine why, for whatever reason, the M3 zoning designation was applied to such a small piece of property when the majority of the surrounding properties are all designated as M1, which is what the applicant's now requesting. We couldn't find any concrete evidence as to why the M3 was placed on the property during the 1993 rezoning. And so it has just remained that ever since, and now someone is interested in developing this, and they're trying to clear up that inconsistency. Additionally, in 2016, the council adopted the South Street Small Area Plan. The purpose of that was to basically guide future land use decisions whenever people came in to do rezonings, or many of the properties which are west of South Street, which are currently in the county, whenever they come to annex in, to provide guidance as far as what the land use and zoning designation should be on those properties. In reviewing that small area plan, the requested M1 is consistent with that small area plan. And so based on that and the rest of the findings here, staff is recommending approval of this rezoning. With that, I'll be happy to try to answer any questions you have, or and if not, then it's all on you.
Okay, is there anybody here to speak on this? Okay, so we'll close this to the public. Yeah, M3 was highway industrial infill.
Correct.
It was never ever used for infill?
This property or the zoning district?
This property.
No, it's currently vacant. To our knowledge, if there was a building on there, it's been vacant for some time. So it's just too small to meet the minimum lot size requirement of the M3.
Back in the day, we M1, 2, and 3. I remember. We were doing M1 and 2 like crazy, left and right, and it really depended upon what they were actually doing. And I'm just wondering if maybe there was some type of heavy use.
There's not a lot of M3 in the city. There is some, a little bit along South Street here, but the majority of the industrial zoning in the city is either, as you were saying, M1 or M2.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any further discussion on this item? No. Okay. Is there a motion on this item?
I'll make a motion to approve rezoning number 5-2017 from Highway Industrial Info M3 to Light Industrial Services and Warehousing M1.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, can we take a vote on this?
Vice Chairman Shavir,
Yes.
Member Baker,
Yes.
Member Ritchie,
Yes.
Secretary Chambers,
Yes.
Member Noel Copeland? Yes. Chairman Williams?
Yes. Okay. Motion passes, and that was our last item for the day. So, with that, we'll get this right, so I'm doing everything perfect. We go to reports.
I don't have much. I just, I know that for a while I was trying to provide you with the summaries of action. I know that I had not included that for some time, so that's why you have the 3 in front of you there. The items that had been previously heard by the Planning and Zoning Commission, I highlighted in yellow, so those are the items that that council had heard at the both November meetings and the 1 December meeting that they held. And so that's just to kind of give you all an update of what's happened based on the hearings that you have had and the action that was taken by council.
Okay, thank you. Anything from City Attorney? Okay. Before we, just in case, did you have anything to report for the school board?
No, he's out until the 8th.
Okay. We'll go with petitions and requests from the public present. Anything? Okay, Mr. Honeycutt. All right, let's go down the list here. Member Noel Copeland, is there anything that?
No report.
Vice Chairman Shavir.
No report, but I would, can I ask staff a clarification on the containers?
Yes, that's
Ordinance.
that was heard on December 12th, so it should be in the 3rd packet that you have, and unfortunately they don't have page numbers on this, but it should be the 3rd page back in your packet. It starts, it's ordinance number 44-2017.
Which?
The 3rd one, the December 12th.
December 12th.
Oh, come on now, you know what happened.
I wasn't at the meeting, so I'm just going to read from the summary of action. The ordinance was approved as modified. The modifications are as follows. Section 34-353B, existing non-conforming shipping containers on residentially zoned or residentially used property for which a permit was issued as of the effective date of this regulation and remains valid, or for which a final inspection has been completed as of the effective date of this regulation, shall be permitted to continue for 18 months from the date of this regulation. During this 18-month period, such non-conforming shipping containers shall be removed from the property within 60 days of the change of ownership of the residentially zoned or utilized property, and Section 34-353C. Alternatively, existing non-conforming shipping containers on residentially zoned or residentially used property that have a valid current building permit as of the effective date of this regulation will be considered legal non-conforming structures which are governed by Section 34-345 and 34-346 of the Land Development Regulations. If this container is not visible from the property lines or is architecturally compatible within 6 months of the effective date of this ordinance, architecturally compatible shall include a pitched roof, siding, and a paint color consistent with the primary residential structure on the property as determined by the administrator. And then there's a provision for a 60-day extension to complete improvements if the administrator is illustrated or is presented with a hardship of the property owner. So I take that as ones that are there can stay for 18 months, and then
The ones that have a valid permit may stay for up to 18 months unless they change it to conform it to be architecturally compatible or hidden from view.
which would include screening, or basically the architecturally compatible would be adding a roof, siding, things of that nature to make it look similar to your typical single-family structure.
So basically, council agreed with the residents to reduce the 3-year period to a 1.5 years, and they may be coming back to council again on Tuesday as a possibility, so this discussion may continue.
Still you.
So let's see if I understand this. If you have a container, okay, and you don't bring it up to code, okay, you have to remove it.
Correct.
When you say bring it up to code, it's very specific. It has to either be architecturally compatible or screened from view to allow it to stay beyond 18 months.
Okay, and so that container can only be used for storage?
No, the code doesn't talk about how it can be used. Specifically, it says whether or not it can be present on a residential lot.
So if they do bring it up to conforming standards that the city has put in place, it can stay?
That is correct.
And as long as it continued to be maintained to that standard?
It would have to continue to meet that code. They couldn't make the improvements and then take them off, then it would no longer meet the code. So it would have to be maintained in the status that conforms to the land development regulations, yes.
And what is the screening requirement on that?
So the screening says that it has to be zoned from, let's see, it cannot be visible from any property line, basically. So it's not just from the street, it's from any property line. The container cannot be visible. So it would have to be screened somehow, whether vegetation, fencing, or a combination of both in order to make it not visible.
Thank you.
Okay. Secretary Chambers.
Nothing.
Member Baker. Member Ritchie.
I don't have a report, but can you confirm something for me? I heard that the corner of Highway 50 and 405, across from Walmart, across from, is it the Ramada?
Triangle piece of property.
The triangular property, that there's Cumberland Farms going in there.
Yes, we have a conditional use permit application on file. They have requested, they weren't specific, it's my understanding it will be a Cumberland Farms, but they, based on conversations with the applicant, but they have requested, an engineering firm has requested a conditional use permit for a convenience store with gas pumps at that location.
I thought we already went through that and rezoned that for that because they wanted to bring a Wawa in.
They did, but
Wawa declined.
Well, the zoning is correct, but I think in almost every zoning district, a convenience store.
Still need the CUP for the tanks?
Correct.
Good.
Yep.
I heard there were a couple other stores that were going to come in there with it.
Yeah, the only other one, they're putting in a some kind of tire, like a auto repair place with it, and then they're putting in a retail or restaurant building that will have 2 or 3 units in it as well. I haven't heard they haven't said what's going in there, but
Another tire store.
Another Pet Boys.
Unbelievable.
All right, so we'll go back to me now. I have 3 questions. So I see that they developed they're developing the piece of property at the mall where the restaurant was supposed to be. Are they developing a restaurant there?
I'm not sure. I haven't seen any plans, but I can certainly check tomorrow and email y'all.
Where Tire Kingdom, not Tire Kingdom, Firestone was a restaurant, and on the original plans, there was supposed to be a restaurant there.
Correct. That's what it was indicated to us, that's what they were going after, was a restaurant at the corner of Harrison and US 1. But like I said, I haven't seen any plans, but I can certainly look. It's easy enough tomorrow, and if we have anything on file, I will be happy to email it out.
My boss is asking me. That'd be Michelle.
What's on the northeast corner?
We don't have anything proposed there north of the Dunkin' Donuts, and
There's a building going in there.
I'm not aware of what that one is.
Bank or something?
There's another 3
BB&T.
You got the,
Yeah, that one's complete.
there's another one that's going to go in 3 stores.
Or it could be one. They weren't specific on that one.
It looked like a lot of that was. I just looked at it on my way here. It looked like they had a small footprint for another building there, but
There is a footprint for another building north of the BB&T and AT&T and Dunkin' Donuts.
Everything
correct.
else looked like it was parking lot around it.
Correct.
Yeah. So I'm just telling you what I saw on my way here. 2 hour and a half ago. All right. So the second question was, in the years past, we used to have. We changed the code that any car lots in downtown would have to have a CUP. Did that change?
If that's what the requirement used to be, it must have, because I do not believe that's a requirement anymore. There are specific minimum requirements they have to meet, but maybe unless it goes over a certain size, it does not trigger a conditional use permit.
What it was the part of that, there was ordinance that had to do with having displays. It was literally a car ordinance on limiting how many times that there could be. Do you remember this? How many times that there could be?
Are you talking about the off-site sales where they could set up?
The off-site sales was six a year, right?
Well, yeah, and then there's a very narrow window that they can apply each year. It's not a conditional use permit, but they do have to come in and basically apply for a permit.
They can only get 6 of them a year, and then in downtown area we limited what they could do, and if they were to do that, they had to have a CUP. But not a big deal. But I saw a car dealership pop up, and I was like, because I remember Lemoyne's I was worried about the small dealerships that we did have at the time, because I didn't think it would be fair to have. At that time, we had 3 major dealerships. Now we have 2, really. And then my last question is the containers again. I want to go back to that. So in years past, we had issues with we'll just say businesses using containers as storage. One in particular has a lot of inventory in there. And so what we did was the code was changed to allow them to be permitted for so many days or months.
That is correct, and that ordinance is still in place. It does offer some flexibility. The administrator has the flexibility to increase the number that are allowed on commercial properties. Residential, it still stands at 1.
Yeah, but I mean, it wasn't ever intended to be permanent.
No, it was never intended, and it still should not be permanent.
That's what it is, has been.
Okay.
For years and years and years and years. And so that was what started it all.
Okay.
And so
there are still time limits. I mean, the ones that are out, the ones that pop up around Christmas time, those still have time limits on them. It's more than 30 days.
Swap out permits, swap out containers. So these expire, we move these out and ship these out, and then we bring in and we pay $25 for another one.
For the commercial properties that do utilize the temporary storage unit permit, there's a process. They need to complete an application before they drop their units on their site. And the code says you may have them for 30 days. The administrator may extend it up to 60 days per year. And you may increase the number for commercial properties of the number of units that they have. There's also a size standard. They can be no longer than 24 feet. And we do attempt to adhere to our code whenever possible. If there's a code violation out there, then we're going to go out there and try and figure it out and tell them what they need to do to come into compliance with the code. But
well, you know, it's like, I'll be honest, it's not like I really care. I'm just saying that the code was specifically done for that business. And I don't want to name names, but it's not like it is the elephant in the room. But because honestly, I don't really care. I'm just, but I see one business doing it, then you see another business doing it, and so it's not like it's a huge deal. But then it creeped into residential, and I was like, wow, that's.
I'm not sure if you're talking about Walmart or another store. Walmart. I mean,
I didn't say that.
It's not. It's not a secret that Walmart was brought before Code Enforcement Board, and we had It's been the past couple of years we've done this, and this year I think we were most successful. We had an attorney hired by Walmart come to our code board meeting and understand the terms and requirements of our temporary storage units. The Code Enforcement Board gave them 60 days from November 3rd until January 3rd. Today we got an email saying that they had prearranged with the pod company that they would be picked up on a certain date. They asked for them to be picked up earlier, and the earliest they can be picked up is January 10th. So the permit was extended, I think, for another 7 days. They should be gone by January 10th.
I bring this up because it's like I know that the city fought and fought and fought with them years and years, and then every year I see them get more and more. I'm like, wow, you know, that's the cities really don't gotta. Well, it don't matter. I don't need to continue that and waste everybody's time. Vice Chairman, was there anything that you wanted to?
While we're on the topic of the container, there is a container near a hairdressing salon off Park Avenue. Been there for a couple of years. And I'm just wondering if anybody has ever commented about that. It's backed up to residential property. And
yeah, I'm not aware, but if someone could certainly turn it into code enforcement, and they can go check it out.
And the other thing is the Taco Bell building on US 1. That's half demolished. What's the status of that?
They still have an active site permit and building permit.
I think it expired at the end of December. I would have to check with the building official, but the 6-month permit was issued.
Oh, that's correct. Sorry. So that will need. We can do some research on that and let you know.
Yeah, I remember at one of our meetings, we were told that it expired and they were going to tear it down. But that's what. Well, okay. Member Ritchie.
They put a fence around the old IHOP there on the river. Is there something going on there?
I was told that it's just basically to secure that property. I do think they're doing a little bit of work on the shoreline to repair damage from Irma. And I think that they wanted to put that up to help keep their equipment safe during the evenings when they're not working on anything.
Is there anything going on with the old Howard Johnson's property?
What,
They
which
were
one's
just
that?
securing that, I thought. I thought they did that years ago, a year or two ago.
Where US 1 and Riverside Drive split?
Kotzky's property?
Yeah, we don't have anything on file for it currently. Well, where Viet River was. Yeah.
I'm talking about the Howard, I'm talking about on the river.
No, there's no change to the Kotzky or the Howard Johnson property at this time.
Okay. Vice Chairman.
On that Howard Johnson property, wasn't there, maybe I'm mistaken, but I thought someone had applied for a permit to put up some condos or some buildings.
There's a
along
developer agreement that's been in place for 10 years. It has another 2 years left in it, but nothing's happened with that developer agreement.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anything else? Anything else? All right. So we are adjourned.